Now, what can be accomplished, particularly between now and the election, November, on the growth front in this country?
I think it's critical that we continue to see economies reopen, rehire employees, and build back, especially in the small business sector. That's going to be what determines whether or not we're able to do this. And we at the same time have to watch the reports on the coronavirus, right, to make sure that the curve stays flat as states reopen and counties and cities come back to normal. I think you're going to see a continued decline in the unemployment. You're going to see people gradually rehiring over the summer. To get back to really robust growth, which is what we'd like to see, I think it's going to take some further efforts at not fiscal stimulus, but probably some investment stimulus, letting people free up from some of the government constraints they have to operate under in order to have flexibility, as money's going to be redeployed, probably coming back into sectors that were shut down, and that will help get back to a more robust level.
As we watch this rather extraordinary recession, because it's self-imposed for good and sufficient reason, it's really hit disproportionately hard on the less fortunate among us, particularly African Americans and Hispanics. Even now, with the unemployment coming, I should say employment coming back, it's hit blacks worse than it has hit others. Can we have that sort of growth and be inclusive of the entire population, or is it going to necessarily benefit some of those at the top?
I think when the growth returns, you're going to see those groups actually get a better benefit out of it because they were hit so hard, right? Typically, they're living in urban areas where the economic shutdown was more extreme and the threat of the coronavirus was more extreme. So it was a necessary, as you pointed out, step. But unfortunately, the minorities that live in the inner city and in the close-in suburbs, they lost their jobs first. And so one of the things that we have to make sure happens is that people that they turn to get jobs and be reemployed are able to reopen and restart. And then when that kicks in, when the urban and suburban areas are coming back to normal, then I think you'll see their unemployment rates also drop quickly.
So there's a sort of a debate going on, David, about equal distribution of economic goods on the one hand and growth on the other. Some people seem to think it is a trade-off, that if you're really going to maximize growth, you necessarily have to have increased inequality, which we have had now since the mid-'70s, early '80s. Other people think that actually, in order to get real growth, you need to have more equal distribution. What is right?
The best way to do it is to have unhindered competition. What I find is the disparity increases when you've got more government intervention, and it ends up people who have more money have more political power, and so they use the political process to benefit themselves. If you allow a greater degree of freedom and competition, then you're going to see the disadvantaged have an opportunity to enter in. You see the common examples are folks who want to start their own small business. Well, if they have to deal with a lot of red tape and regulations that a big company can deal with, they hire lawyers, they get it done. But a small entrepreneur, somebody who's maybe just finished college, tries to open up a small business, that can be overwhelming. So what we've got to be careful about is not to block the opportunities for people to rise above where they're at. That's where you'll get more equality as people are rewarded for their successes.
David, you've been a student of this for some time, going back a ways, frankly. If you really look at history, do the facts really bear out your thesis? In this sense, the 1980s, under President Reagan, it was really a deregulatory time. Remember Alfred Kahn from Cornell, things like that. And yet, income inequality grew in the 1980s. Now, they continue to grow as regulation came back into vogue in the 90s and the 2000s. But is there an indication in history that, in fact, if you have less regulation, you will have a more equal distribution of economic goods?
The problem with that is that if you really want to get total equality, they always level down, right? So that's how you can get to equality. And so what you need to do is have opportunity so everybody can see an increase and be better off. And that's what happened in the Reagan era. John Kennedy expressed it really well when he said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And that should be our goal, not necessarily everybody being totally equal, because at that point, everybody is worse off.
So, David, President Trump has prided himself on really cutting back on regulations. Just had an executive order in the last few days, further really deregulating things. Will this be an issue in the election, do you think? Is this something that President Trump can actually get votes on deregulation? It sounds, frankly, a little bit abstract, I think, to a lot of Americans.
Yeah, I think you're right, David. It's that nitty-gritty behind the scenes. It's necessary. It'll make a big difference of letting small businesses open up and rehire people. But it's not your political slogan you take out on the campaign trail. I think you're going to see other things dominate that, like law and order and a discussion about where we go from there. But it's absolutely necessary to hold back the red tape so that the economy can recover. And that is an election issue, right? People are going to ask themselves in November, okay, we just went through the coronavirus. We had to shut down our whole economy. Has the president got it back and running again? Or do we have a chance that next year is going to be better than last year? And if they can say yes to that, he's got a good chance to get reelected. If they see, no, we're still held back, people aren't allowed to open their business, we've got all this red tape and bureaucracy to deal with, I can't get a job, then people are going to be frustrated.
At the same time, David, is there some regulation that we can all agree is good and necessary and some that is bad and we should do away with? And let me give you a specific example. Given this pandemic, a lot of focus on workplace safety. Is this a time to really be dialing back on things like OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, to really protect workers as they go back, particularly frontline workers as they go back to work?
I think what you need to do is look, there are two different types of regulation. There's the ones that actually set out a standard to keep people safe, and we need those, definitely. OSHA needs to be enforcing those. But they also have a lot of red tape and things that they'll go in and fine a business for not filling out the log exactly right. If you can give people a break on that and say, hey, we're not going to penalize you if you kept people safe and you tried your best to do all our paperwork, then you can actually see a better result. But you're right, some regulations that are needed for health and safety should be kept. What we found in the pandemic was some of those that were health and safety actually were holding us back. The famous one being the regulations against telemedicine across state lines. Well, when everything got shut down, that was the only way doctors could talk to their patients. So we had to remove that regulation so people could be treated.
Okay, David, it's always a treat to have you with us. Thank you so much. That's David McIntosh of the Club for Growth. And now